My MOM said I wouldn't be welcome at Christmas because my stepfather's parents, who despise me, would be there. So I cut all contact and stopped supporting them. But sometime later, they showed up at my door desperate. I'm Alex, 28 years old, and until recently, I thought my family was something I'd never lose. I live alone in a small apartment, work as a technician for a telecommunications company, and I've always tried to do the right thing. My mom, Laura, married Carlos when I was 10, after my biological dad abandoned us. Carlos brought his daughter, Sophia, who's now 13. She's not my blood sister, but I've always loved her like one. The thing is, Carlos's parents, Elena and Marcos, never liked me, all because of something that happened years ago. When I was 15 and Sophia was 6, we were playing in the yard, running, laughing, the usual. But she tripped and fell badly, breaking her leg. It was an accident, but I felt awful. I carried her to the house while she screamed in pain. My mom and Carlos took her to the hospital, and I stayed home devastated. But Carlos's parents, who showed up at the hospital like they owned the place, blamed me. They said I was a danger, that I shouldn't be near Sophia. From that day on, every time they saw me, it was pure contempt. Elena would always remind me, because of you, my granddaughter suffered. Marcos didn't say anything, but his cold stare was just as bad. Over the years, I learned to live with it. I finished high school, got a good job, and started helping my mom and Carlos with a mortgage on their house. I wasn't rich, but I put part of my salary toward it every month, so they wouldn't lose the house. I also helped with groceries and other small expenses. I did it because I felt they were my family. Sophia never held a grudge against me, and Carlos, though sometimes distant, seemed grateful. My mom always said I was her salvation. But everything went to hell last December. It was a regular afternoon, a few days before Christmas. I was in my apartment, planning what gift to buy for Sophia, when my mom called. Her voice sounded tense, like she didn't want to say what she was about to. "Alex, you can't come to Christmas dinner this year," she blurted out. I went silent, thinking it was a joke. How could I not come? What happened? It's because of Carlos's parents. They'll be at the house, and they don't want you there. They say they don't feel comfortable with you around. I felt a knot in my stomach. "And what did you tell them?" I asked, trying not to sound as hurt as I felt. "Alex, it's complicated. It's not just them. It's about the inheritance. Elena and Marcos say if we keep in contact with you, they'll disinherit Carlos. We can't risk it. It's a lot of money and we need it." I couldn't believe it. My own mother was kicking me out of Christmas, out of my home, for money, for an inheritance that wasn't even guaranteed. "So you're trading me for cash?" I said, my voice trembling. "It's not like that, Alex. It's just one night. You can come another day." "No, Mom. If I'm not family for Christmas, I'm not family at all." I hung up before she could say anything else. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, thinking about everything I'd done for them. The years helping with the mortgage, the expenses, all for them to treat me like I was nothing. I felt betrayed, used, and then I decided I couldn't keep going like this. The next day, I called my mom and told her I wouldn't help with the mortgage or anything else anymore. "If I'm not family, I'm not paying like I am," I said. She tried to explain, but I didn't let her. I hung up, blocked her number and Carlos's. I didn't block Sophia because she wasn't to blame, but she didn't write to me either. The days leading up to Christmas were strange. I felt lonely but also free. I didn't want to have a bad time, so I decided to do something different. I invited some friends from work and a couple from high school to my apartment. It was a mansion, but it had room for some chairs, a table, and a small Christmas tree I bought at a cheap store. I got food, beers, and put up lights to make it look decent. I wasn't going to let them ruin my night. Christmas came, and my friends showed up with good vibes. There were 5 of them. One, my co-worker who always is a joke, Maria, who I've known since high school and always supported me. Diego, another co-worker who brought his own beer. Carla, who was like the mom of the group. And Leo, who wouldn't stop talking about soccer. We played music, ate pizza and some empanadas Carla made, laughed, told stories, And for a moment, I forgot everything that had happened. At one point, one looked at the tree and said, "Hey, Alex, this tree's sadder than my bank account." We all laughed, and Maria threw a napkin at him. "Leave it alone. At least it's got lights," she said, winking at me. I felt good, like I'd found a new family, one that didn't make me feel like a burden. Around midnight, I got a message from Sophia. It was a photo of the Christmas dinner at my mom's house. The table was full of food, the tree was shining, and Elaine and Marcos were sitting there like they owned everything. The message said, "I miss you, Alex." It hurt to see her caught up in that mess, but I didn't reply. I'd made a decision, and I had to stick to it. That night, while my friends toasted and sang a terrible version of A Christmas Carol, I felt at peace. It wasn't the Christmas I'd expected, but it was mine. I thought that would be the end, that my mom and Carlos would understand I'd drawn a line. But a month later, everything changed in a way I never saw coming. Everything seemed fine until one Saturday morning when someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I thought it was the neighbor asking for sugar again. I opened the door without thinking much, and there they were. My mom, Laura, my stepfather, Carlos, and Sophia, my little sister. My mom's eyes were red, like she'd been crying all night. Carlos looked uncomfortable, staring everywhere but at me. Sophia stood behind them, eyes down, clutching her hands. I froze. "Alex, please," my mom said, her voice breaking. "We need to talk. We know we messed up. It was a terrible mistake. Let me explain." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to slam the door in their faces, but another part wanted to hear them out, if only to see how far they'd go with their excuses. I let them in, though I didn't offer them anything. They sat on the couch, and I stood, arms crossed. "Christmas was a mistake," my mom began. "We shouldn't have listened to Carlos's parents. You're my son, Alex, and you don't know how much I regret leaving you out. Please forgive us." I looked at Carlos, expecting him to say something, but he just nodded, like he had nothing to add. Sophia glanced up for a second, her eyes pleading, but I didn't know what for. I didn't feel anything from what my mom was saying. Her words sounded empty, like she'd rehearsed them. "No, Mom," I said sharply. "You kicked me out of the family for an inheritance. You used me for years. I put my salary into your house. And when it came down to it, you chose Carlos's parents over me. There's no going back." My mom started crying, but it didn't move me. Carlos finally spoke, his voice low. "Alex, it's not that simple. The old folks are difficult, you know that. But without you, the house, we can't keep up with the mortgage. We're in trouble." There it was, the truth. They weren't here for me. It wasn't real regret. They wanted me to fork over money again. I laughed, but not out of joy. "So that's it? You're not here to apologize because you miss me. You're here because you can't pay the bills." How convenient. My mom stood and came closer, lowering her voice so Carlos wouldn't hear. "Alex, please. The inheritance from Carlos's parents won't come until they die. We have no way to survive. You're all we have left." I looked into her eyes, and for a second, I saw the mom who used to hug me when I was a kid. But that mom was gone. "You should have thought of that before abandoning me at Christmas," I said coldly. "I'm not your bank. Get out." Sophia let out a small sob, but didn't say anything. Carlos stood, clearly annoyed but not daring to confront me. My mom tried to speak again, but I cut her off. "Out. I don't want to see you again." They left without saying much more. Sophia gave me one last look before I closed the door, and I felt a pang in my chest. She wasn't to blame, but I couldn't let that soften me. I closed the door and sat on the couch, trying to calm down. I thought that would be the end, but I was very wrong. The next few days were strange. I felt relieved, but couldn't get Sophia's face out of my head. I tried to stick to my routine, work, beers with Juan and Maria on Fridays, but something felt off. One night, a few days after their visit, I noticed my wallet wasn't on the table where I always leave it. I searched the whole apartment, thinking I'd lost it, but nothing. Then I remembered something. When my mom and Carlos were at my place, I'd gotten up to use the bathroom, leaving them alone in the living room. I didn't want to believe it, but the doubt gnawed at me. I checked the building security cameras, which thankfully recorded the hallway. They weren't great, but there it was. Carlos leaving my apartment, holding something in his hand, looking around like he didn't want to be seen. It was my wallet. They'd come to apologize, but tried to rob me in the process. I felt a rage I can't explain. I wanted to go to their house and confront them, but I thought of Sophia. She didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of that mess. I called my friend Diego, who's a cop, and told him everything. He said I could report them, but without stronger evidence, it wouldn't go beyond a warning. I decided not to do anything, for Sophia's sake, but I swore I'd never trust him again. I spent the next few weeks trying to forget it all. I focused on work, hung out more with my friends, and even started dating a girl, Anna, who I met at the gym. She was fun, straightforward, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could build something without the weight of my family. But just when I thought everything was under control, I got a call that changed everything. It was a Friday night. I was at home, watching a movie with a beer in hand. My phone rang, and I saw Sophia's name on the screen. I hesitated for a second, but answered. Her voice was shaky, like she was about to cry. "Alex, please, I need your help," she said, almost whispering. "Something's wrong. The grandparents aren't breathing. They're in the living room, and they're not moving. Mom and Dad aren't home. I don't know what to do." My heart raced. "Not breathing? Sophia, calm down. Did you call an ambulance?" "Yes, but they're not here yet. I'm scared, Alex. Please come." I didn't think twice. I grabbed my keys, my jacket, and ran to my car. As I drove, my mind was racing. What the hell was going on? Why weren't my mom and Carlos home? And above all, what had happened to Elena and Marcos? I didn't know what I'd find, but something told me this was just the beginning of something much worse. When I arrived, an ambulance was parked in front of the house, its red and blue lights flashing, lighting up the street like a movie scene. A couple of nosy neighbors were watching from their windows, but I didn't care. I got out of the car and ran to the door. In the living room, 2 paramedics were wheeling out Elena and Marcos on stretchers. Their faces were pale, with oxygen masks strapped to them. They looked fragile, like life was slipping away. Sophia was curled up in a corner, crying, her knees pulled to her chest. I ran to her and hugged her tightly. "I'm here, little one," I said, stroking her hair. She clung to me, sobbing uncontrollably. "Alex, I don't know what happened. They were drinking coffee, talking, and then they just fell. They weren't moving," she said, her voice breaking. "Calm down. Everything's going to be okay," I murmured, though I had no idea if it was true. I looked at the paramedics, who were working quickly, shouting orders to each other. One of them approached me and said, "We're taking them to the hospital. It's serious. Are you family?" I explained that I was Sophia's stepbrother, that I didn't live there, but came because she called me. The guy nodded and went back to work. Then a police officer approached. He was an older man with deep wrinkles and a look that seemed to have seen it all. "You're Alex?" he asked, glancing at a notebook. I nodded. He asked for my ID and ran through the routine questions. When I got there, if I saw anything strange where my mom and Carlos were, I told him I didn't know anything about them, that Sophia called me, and I came running. Then he lowered his voice and dropped a bombshell. We did quick tests on the coffee cups the grandparents were drinking from. We found chemicals that shouldn't be there. This could be an attempted poisoning. "Do you know anyone who want to harm them?" I froze. Sophia, who overheard, let out a whimper and cried harder, squeezing my hand. "No, I have no idea," I said, but my mind went straight to my mom's words in my apartment. "The inheritance won't come until they die." A chill ran through me. Could she? I didn't want to think it, but the doubt hit me like a hammer. "I don't know anything," I repeated, trying to sound certain. The officer stared at me, like he was trying to read my mind. "If you remember anything, call me," he said, handing me a card with his name, Officer Morales, and a number. I nodded but couldn't shake the thought. I decided to take Sophia to my apartment. I couldn't leave her alone in that house, and my mom and Carlos still hadn't shown up. I helped her into the car, put my jacket on her because she was trembling, and we drove in silence. When we got there, I made her hot chocolate and sat her on the couch with a blanket. Try to rest, little one. Everything's going to be okay, I said, though I didn't believe it. She nodded, her eyes red, and stared at the wall. An hour later, my phone rang. It was my mom. I answered, and her voice sounded desperate, like she was about to collapse. Alex, I'm at the police station. Please come. I need you to tell them I didn't do anything. It's a mistake, I swear. I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to hang up and let her deal with it, but another part needed answers. What did you do, Mom? I asked, my voice cold. Nothing, Alex, nothing. Just come, please, she begged. I hung up and looked at Sophia, who'd fallen asleep on the couch. I didn't want to leave her alone, but I had no choice. I tucked her in bed with a blanket and headed to the station. When I got there, a cop took me to a small room where my mom was sitting, handcuffed. She looked like a wreck, hair disheveled, face swollen from crying. Alex, thank you for coming, she said, her voice trying to sound calm but breaking. The officer with her, Officer Morales again, spoke first. We found evidence at the house, he said, staring at me. Chemicals hidden in a closet where your mother keeps her clothes. There are fingerprints on the containers, and it all points to her. She'll be arraigned in a few days. Do you have anything to say? I looked at my mom, expecting her to deny it, to scream that it was a lie. But she didn't say anything, just lowered her gaze. The officer left us alone for a moment. My mom leaned closer and whispered, Alex, defend me. Call a lawyer. Don't let them put me in jail. It was Carlos. He helped me. We wanted the inheritance. But you can't let them blame me alone. I stared at her, incredulous, my stomach churning. You did it? You really tried to kill them? I asked, almost voiceless. She hesitated, then, in a faint voice, said, Yes. We didn't know what else to do. We couldn't pay the bills. It was the only way. I felt like I had been punched. My mom, the person who raised me, who called me her pride, had tried to murder 2 people for money. I couldn't process it. I stayed silent, staring at her as she kept pleading. Alex, please, don't let me fall. You're my son. I didn't respond. I walked out of the room, my head spinning. I went to Officer Morales and said, She says Carlos was involved too. Investigate him. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, but I couldn't stay silent. The officer nodded and jotted something in his notebook. I went back to my apartment, where Sophia was still sleeping. I sat in a chair, staring at the wall, trying to understand how my life had turned into this. My mom, a murderer, Carlos, her accomplice, and Sophia, an innocent kid caught in the middle. The next day, I got a call from the hospital. Elena and Marcos had died. The chemicals, combined with their age, were too much for their bodies. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and something I couldn't name. But I couldn't tell Sophia. Not yet. When she woke up, she looked at me with those big eyes and asked, How are my grandparents? I lied because I had no other choice. They're better, little one. We'll know more soon, I said, forcing a smile. She nodded, trusting me, and that broke me inside. The days passed quickly, like the world wanted to rush through this nightmare. The trial came, and I attended without telling Sophia. The courtroom was packed, journalists, curious neighbors, and me sitting in a corner, trying not to draw attention. My mom and Carlos were there with their lawyers, but they looked defeated. The evidence was overwhelming. The chemicals in the house, the fingerprints, messages between them planning it all, even a vial hidden in the garage with Carlos's initials. There was no escape. The judge was direct, declaring my mom and Carlos guilty of first-degree murder. The sentence, 25 years in prison for each, with no possibility of parole for at least 20. When my mom was let out of the courtroom in handcuffs, she looked at me one last time. Her eyes were cold, like she blamed me for not saving her. I felt nothing, no sadness, no anger, just an immense void. On the way home, I cried, not for her, not for Carlos, but for what I'd lost. My mom, the only family I had left, was gone, and in the worst way possible. I felt alone, like the whole world had collapsed. But then I thought of Sophia. She was the only thing that mattered now. When I got home, she was watching a movie on TV. She looked at me and asked, "How are my grandparents?" And Mom and Dad. I sat beside her, taking a deep breath. I couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet. Mom and Dad went on a work trip. I said, hating myself for lying, "Your grandparents are with them. They're recovered. They asked me to take care of you for a while. They'll come visit someday." Sophia stayed quiet, processing. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "Okay," she murmured and curled up against me. I hugged her, feeling the weight of the lie in my chest. Now I live with her, taking care of her, trying to give her a normal life. I go to work, take her to school, and pretend everything's fine. But every night, when she's asleep, I think about how I'll explain it all when she's older. The truth about our mom, about Carlos, about what happened to her grandparents. I don't know how I'll do it, but for now, I can only keep moving forward. For her.